Journalists and lawyers in Uganda have teamed up in a new battle to fight growing threats to freedom of the media and expression, which are essential elements of any democracy. The new effort has been inspired by the increase in recent years of threats from the government and security agencies to the industry and individual journalists. These have come by way of arbitrary closures of media houses, targeting of journalists, especially during political demonstrations, and enactment of repressive laws and regulations that seek to limit rather than promote freedom of the media and of expression. In early February of 2014, for example, the Minister of Information and National Guidance, Rosina Mayanja, issued statutory regulations requiring anybody who desires to practice journalism to obtain a practicing certificate, a directive that has been opposed by many journalists. Human Rights Network for Journalists-Uganda has teamed up with other organizations to challenge the law.
Human Rights Network for Journalists-Uganda, Center for Public Interest Law, and East Africa Media Institute have challenged the Press and Journalists Act in the Constitutional Court. We're asking the Constitutional Court to look at this law vis-a-vis the Constitution and tell us whether it meets the standards that are placed in the Constitution. The standards we're talking about are under Article 29 of the Constitution, which talk about freedom of expression, the registration of journalists, the charging of fees. Are these constitutional? We're talking about a right which envisions seeking, receiving, and imparting of information. Therefore, must we have degrees, as journalists, enroll using a tedious process, pay for a practice certificate renewable every year, to disseminate information to the public. The African Commission has extensively ruled on, about the issue of registration and said it's illegal. In the case of Scarlett and Holderness versus the Attorney General of Zimbabwe, the Commission got the views of the Inter-American Human Rights Court, which said that registration of journalists, compulsory registration and accreditation of journalists is an illegal act. And it said that journalists should only be regulated in 3 parameters. The first being to professionalize the media, the government, so the government can come up with laws that professionalize the media, that ensure competence of journalists, and then they can also regulate the numbers of journalists for purposes of planning for the industry and strengthening it. So the issue of charging fees is irregular, and we should know that the journalists in this country do not even earn as much fees as they are charging. And the law as it is now does not allow the Media Council to collect the fees, because we don't have a National Institute of Journalists of Uganda, which is envisioned by the Press and Journalists Act. So that means the journalists that are existent in Uganda cannot pay without being enrolled. So we need you first to enroll these journalists, and then after enrollment they need to pay the fees. They need to pay for their practicing certificates with the Media Council. So what do we do in a situation where we don't even have the statutory bodies that are envisioned in the law? This law was enacted 19 years ago. Why is government coming out now? Uganda is party to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and Article 9 is very clear on the freedom of expression, and the decision of the African Commission in the case of Scarlett and Holderness versus Zimbabwe also is binding to Uganda. So the government should review their decision to charge journalists.
But some journalists have welcomed the new regulations as a step towards improving the quality of journalism, but also as a foundation for upholding high ethical standards.
Personally, my opinion is that the registration of journalists is very, very important, so that we can understand who is a journalist and who is not a journalist. Move away from the newsroom so that journalists can take charge. This is our time to take charge. It is our time to be in control of the media houses. Why should you go and study journalism and then you come and be put at the same level with somebody who has never gone to school, but it is because he's holding a microphone or he's holding a camera? Can you imagine? Sincerely, why did we go to school? Time has come, ladies and gentlemen, our friends in the legal fraternity, to help us and see that our profession is protected. And it must be protected by removing the comedians from the media house. By removing the musicians who are going dancing karaoke in the night, because they have people who watch them, who watch the commercial, and then in the morning they put them on the TV, and those are the ones that are paid highly. For us, we journalists, real journalists, are completely getting nothing. We never started to eat stones.
But Anita says freedom of expression is not a preserve for journalists, and its control therefore is unconstitutional.
We should actually distinguish between journalists, professional journalists and citizen journalists. As a professional journalist, there is a parameter within which to operate. We know that we have the ethical code of conduct which we must follow. We cannot stop other people from disseminating information or seeking, receiving and sharing views. Like on Facebook, if I wrote a story on Facebook, it's different. Anyone can write a story. But as a journalist, what are the parameters within which you should write a story? You know, you have to get views from the person you're writing about. It has to be accurate. So there's a clear distinct which is brought by the professional code of ethics. Like I said, freedom of expression is not a preserve of journalists alone. It is a right that must be enjoyed by every citizen in this country. And therefore, regulating expression, to control, is not going to work. This is a right. It's not like the legal profession or the medical profession. This is a right where we have to, disseminate information. So in essence, government is saying for a journalist to report about the poor standard of hospitals in Uganda, they must pay to report. And unlike me, or unlike a lawyer who charges a client, money, legal fees, it's different. We charge for legal fees. Therefore, it's justifiable to pay for practicing certificates. It's different with journalists who are disseminating information and reaching out to those people in communities that cannot easily access this information. The issue of registration to know the number of journalists is right. Actually, the African Commission also said, but it's not wrong per se. We can register to know how many journalists can we plan for in terms of strengthening their competence, in terms of professionalizing the media industry. That should be regulated upon, but not the issue of payment of fees. That's an irregular process, it's onerous, and I think the media should come together and engage government to come up with laws that develop the sector and strengthen it, and not to control it, because now this leads to self-censorship.
Other journalists argue that besides registration with the statutory body, there is need for other measures to secure better working conditions from employers.
You can work for a private media for 5 or 10 years, but they will always ensure that you don't have any written document showing that you work there. So you are there like a drug dealer or some kind of these people who do dirty deals at your own risk. That's why you find journalists have abandoned their obligations of being professional. They go out to look for news, and when they see that the news is too sensitive, they decide to sell it. You come across documents implicating somebody in government of corruption. Instead, you go to the man and say, you see, this shows that you are corrupt. What do you have for me? He says, gentleman, Mzee, I have 100,000. Now, to prove that you are not going to write that story, you just give him the documents and say, you go and throw them in your toilet. And you eat that 100,000 and survive like that.
But the temptation or tendency to compromise ethical values and the desire for freebies among journalists is another major challenge facing the journalism practice in Uganda.
This really is one of the biggest challenges we have as journalists. I'll call them freebies, envelopes, transport refund, eats on functions and what have you. It's a bitter fact. Yeah, some journalists would not want to listen to that. Those are the smallest things that really let us down as journalists. So we'd rather come up as a group to fight this, or we will go down as that profession.
The sense of entitlement among some journalists, some argue, is a hangover sign of a public service mentality, something that has got to be overcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us accept that the public broadcaster days are behind us. What does that mean? Liberalization. What did it mean? The future of journalists is exactly like that of lawyers. The owners don't owe you anything, not even salaries. That's the truth. You are as competent, as skilled as we are. And in law, you come to Nicholas's farm for apprenticeship only. Both you and him know that your days in my farm are what? Are numbered. You must go out there and hunt. Yeah? You eat what you what? You kill. You've been given the tough skills, legal. So even the skill of sourcing the story, reporting it ethically, competently, if that's your training, you don't need your employer. Your employer is the one who is supposed to need you. This is what is in the open, free democratic what? Societies. Employers, owners won't fight for your independence. You must yourself fight for your independence, even within the editorial room. You must be able to quit.
Despite the latest effort by HRNJ, many journalists in Uganda still show a lack of interest in matters that affect their practice, much to the frustration of supporters and well-wishers.
We are being vetted. You, the media, refused to come to the Constitutional Court to open up those vetting proceedings. At Legal Brains Trust, we have been kneeling before the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association the whole of last year. Please take up the petition to cause Parliament to abandon that policy of holding closed-door proceedings for vetting people who will become public what? Officials. The president selects in secrecy. The papers they present, we don't know. And then those people are there. Those people have done bad things. They have raped women. They have done what? The girls are there. And those girls are willing to come. And they see that the man passes through the system and is sitting as a judge, resident judge in Guru. He's a rapist. But the media have not done their what? Their job. I am told that the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association and here Jacques, they refuse to do so because there are some privileges Kadaga has thrown. Cabbages, really. Cabbages. Your cabbage people. And Uganda is suffering. You could have stopped. The Kenyans did it. The Kenyans did it. They did it. They can finally say, we what? We did it. Even those who escaped through the system, they got her. You saw what happened to Deputy CJ Baraza. Yeah, they did it. The judges are on Bunkenke. They are on Bunkenke. Kenyans are getting customer service in their courts of law. Customer what? Service. Here, crap. Justice. I speak passionately because that's where I reside. It's a crap place.
In the meantime, the government may have to wait until HRNJ's petition has been disposed of by the Constitutional Court.
Any matter arising out of that particular law cannot take shape until our petition is heard and determined. And we encourage you to drag your feet when it comes to registration.
This is Henry Lutaya reporting for the Sunrise.